Today we're going to be comparing the F80 M3 and the E93 M3. It's a very controversial topic when it comes to the new M fanboys and the OGs. What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Horsepower Cartel. Today we're going to be comparing the F80 M3 and the E93 M3, you know, back to back or side by side, you can say. I recently purchased this obviously through my company, Limitless Luxuries, because we deal in cars, luxury cars, sports cars, supercars, exotic cars, whatever you need, hit us up. So I acquired this car, actually sold it, believe it or not, Ruel.
Sold already.
It's sold, yeah. Bro, I bought it on last Tuesday. I bought it.
Yeah.
And it got sold last Tuesday. I took delivery, I would say about 5:36, and it was sold around the same time the next day, probably like a half an hour before. So less than 24 hours it got sold. Shout out to the new buyer who, you know, bought it sight unseen. I mean, this car is perfect. The previous owner took really good care, recently serviced. He also wanted to get the upgraded steering wheel, so we went ahead and did the upgraded steering wheel on this. It's got the RPM, rev meter, rev count, or whatever you want to call it. Alcantara, carbon fiber. Paddle shifters are still the same size. Yeah, it's got the M stitching as well. Looks pretty cool, and nice feel on it. But we're not talking about the accessories on this car in this episode or any add-ons, but we're going to talk about my opinion on both these cars because it's a very controversial topic when it comes to the new M fanboys and the OGs. So yeah, let's get into it real quick. Okay, so the F80 M3 came out in 2014. I think in India it was launched. There was only a few models that came in 2014. I think they officially started getting cars in 2015. So the F80 M3 is powered by an inline 6 3-liter twin turbocharged motor. It's called the S55. It also makes about 431 horsepower, which is not much compared to the previous generation at being 414, but it also makes 550 Nm of torque, which is like 150 Nm bump up from the previous generation. We'll get into that car in a bit, but for right now we're going to talk about the F80. Obviously the upgrades, you see, you got the bigger iDrive. Well, this was an option because this has the 360 camera, and it also has Harman Kardon as an optional sound system in here. This car obviously is a little more refined. I drove this car plenty of times before I got this, but properly got some seat time now since we bought it. And I honestly thought this car is actually slightly more refined than, not slightly more, a lot more refined than the E92, E93 M3. But then again, that rawness that you get from that V8, you cannot match it. I drove this and then I drove my M3 back to back, and I have to say this lacks a lot of character. I mean, it feels a little more animated. Cars doing a lot of driving for you. It's a lot of power. It's way faster. I mean, a stage 2 in this is really, really fast. You're looking at about 600 to 650 horsepower, 550 to the wheels. It's insane what these motors can do. That's why they call it like the German 2JZ, you could say. Well, not this one, but the S50, or sorry, the B55 or the B58, being an inline 6 3-liter twin turbo. So yeah, as I was saying, this car weighs less than the previous gen E92, E93 M3. This car is coming in at 1600, about 1700 kilos. Previous M3 was actually almost 20 to 30 kilos more heavier, so that's crazy. This one's fitted from factory in India. All these cars came with the carbon fiber roof, whether it's the M4 or M3. So none of them came with sunroofs, where in the E92 it was an option, but some of the E92s came with the carbon roof. Obviously mine didn't because it's a convertible, so that weighs a lot more, believe it or not. That weighs more than 200 kgs. Can you believe that?
The convertible?
The convertible E93 M3 weighs 200 kgs more than this M3 and E92. A lot of upgrades in this car from the previous Gen M3. Like, this got better brakes, obviously. Even though it's in a lighter car, it's got 380 in the front and about 370 in the back, compared to the E92, which is only about 350 and 340. I can definitely tell you this braking, I've driven both cars, the braking on this is much better compared to the E93, which I have, even though I have EBC brake pads, EBC yellow brake pads. Now, as you can see, this car came with LED headlights, as I think it was standard on these cars, in India at least. The E92, E93 only had bi-xenon headlights with optional cornering, active cornering lights. So coming to the front, as you can see, very aggressive design. The front end, it looks amazing. You know this is a car not to mess around with. It's not a Econobox like a regular 3 Series. It is something to be taken on the track and thrown around. Also, it does 0 to 100 in 4.1 seconds and a quarter mile of 12.7. And some people have known to do 12.2, 12.3 bone stock. So it all depends on how good traction you get, because this thing's not hooking till 3rd gear, even though it's bone stock and no tune, even with some good tires. It's just a torque monster in a light car, you know, a lot of torque. As you can see, there's a part of the engine bay, I guess it's a crossbar or something for stability. It's made out of carbon fiber. Looks pretty cool. It looks like they could have fit a V8 in here, but obviously because of our tree huggers and the global warming stuff, they had to downsize and obviously go forced induction compared to keeping a V8 or a V8 twin turbo. That's why the M5 went from a V10 to a V8 twin turbo, all because of the tree huggers and global warming. Believe it or not, the F10 was supposed to come with the V10 twin turbo. Now in the M3, I prefer the M3 in the F series over the M4 because the M3 has these wide fenders. They're so widened and it looks really nice. You know, gives it that wider track, makes it more aggressive looking as well. Compared to the M4 where it just flows with the body of the car, this actually looks like it's been rolled out and pulled out like by a body shop or aftermarket company or something, you know. You got these nice LED taillights as well, which were standard on the M3. Got this nice carbon fiber spoiler and M Performance exhaust. Speaking about the exhaust, obviously I prefer the V8, obviously because it's way better sounding compared to the inline 6 3-liter. These don't sound that good, you know, but you do sacrifice the sound for the power. For me, it's the other way around because it takes away from the driving pleasure. Now, this fortunately just has the M Performance exhaust with a custom mid pipe, so it sounds pretty decent. I'll make you guys hear an exhaust clip right now. Now, carbon ceramics weren't introduced in the F80s and the F82s, but in the new G series, the G80 and the G82, it is available as an option. And I think it's standard on some competitions. I'm not sure if it's standard on the competition or not. But let's not get into that. That's a whole nother video. That car is cheat codes. You know, I don't even know where to start with that car. It's blistering fast. It runs like mid to low 11s, bone stock, fresh out the box. Obviously, the competition being an X-Drive all-wheel drive, where this is a rear-wheel drive, so it just keeps spinning till 3rd gear. So yeah, let's go downstairs, check out the E93, and see what I'm missing out on, I guess you could say, from the features from this and that. But then again, as cars get newer, the driving experience gets less. The car does more of the driving compared to the older cars, where it's that raw, fun power. And of course that V8. So let's go check out that V8 right now. The DCT, this also comes with the 7-speed DCT, which is very quick compared to the old one, but the rawness and the firmness and the feeling you get from the previous gen DCT, 100 times better, way more pleasurable, way more better when it comes to driving experience. But this is definitely more refined for driving every day. For a daily driver, I would definitely pick this over the E92 when it comes to driving pleasure and steering feedback or anything, because this has electric steering. That's another thing I forgot to tell you guys. This has a electric steering, power steering, where the older ones are hydraulic. So the feedback you're getting constantly is not as good as the ones you're going to get in the previous Gen M3. Let me just give you a little flip on how this sounds like. It's not that great. I would definitely not choose this sound-wise over the E92. And the E92 M3, E93 M3 just has a different charm about it, you know, like you can't compare it. Okay, so as you can see, we got the power domes on both the hoods. It was introduced in the E46. I think the E46 had vents on it. This has vents on it too. One is functional for the intake, so it actually sucks in air straight from the hood and feeds the intake air. So believe it or not, this is actually the little brother of the legendary S85 V10, which comes in the M5. That's a 5-liter V10. This is a 4-liter V8, and it's the S65. That's the S85. It's basically 1 liter less, 2 cylinders less, obviously. And yeah, this also revs up to 8,200 RPMs from the factory, and so does the V10. So it's got a lot of similarities. That one's actually designed by BMW's motorsport team, so you know, something serious. That's why it was never reliable and never meant to be driven, daily driven, like how I used to do. But you know, that car was good until we ran into some problems. Let's not get into that because that's a very touchy subject. But anyways, here it is. Like I'm saying, both the hood scoops are there, but one is functional, one's not. One's a dummy just for aesthetic purposes. There's actually one over here which actually feeds air into the intake, as you can see over here. And this thing has ITBs, which is individual throttle bodies. So it's basically, the manifold is basically 8 throttle bodies sucking in air. That's why I get that beautiful sound. My buddy Joe Garage has it on his M3, the carbon fiber manifold, which is a pretty penny. You've seen it in the previous vlog. Will's probably just going to show it right now, but it is pretty amazing sounding. That's because of this as well. The individual throttle bodies help out sucking some cold, nice air for this naturally aspirated motor. So the E93 M3, but I'm going to talk about the E92 because obviously that was meant for the track, where the E93 is more of a GT touring car, not meant to go around the track or set any numbers. Believe it or not, a lot of E92 M3s are really quick. My buddy Serge in America, man, he had one. He obviously upgraded to an F80 M3. Which is really quick. I think it holds the fastest record quarter mile time for stock turbos. I think he did a 10.3 in the quarter mile, which is insane. That's like F90 M5 stage 2 numbers, you know. But obviously he removed the seats and got drag radials, so that's what made the car so good. Obviously the tune that he has on there, and obviously Sergi has his secret sauce. But anyways, one thing I forgot to mention, the shift knob from this car and the E93 or the E92 is pretty similar. I mean, you obviously have the buttons below the shift knob for the velocity of the shifting. The velocity of the shifting means like how hard, how quick, and how aggressive you want the shift. So in the E92 and the E93, you have, I think, about 5 different settings, where this only has 3. That one feels way more aggressive and raw compared to this one, like I said, because this is more refined, a little more animated, which is a good and a bad thing. So let's talk about the E92. It's an S65 motor, like I said, 4-liter V8, makes about 414 horsepower and about 400 Nm of torque, which is not much. It being a naturally aspirated V8 engine that revs up to 8,000 RPMs. A lot of these high revving engines, like Hondas, as you can see, or Ferraris in general, the naturally aspirated motors, or you know, naturally aspirated high revving motors in general don't have that much torque, revving up to 8,000 RPMs, 8,200 as the cutoff from factory. And obviously with the tune I have now, it goes up to 8,500, 8,600. Not sure, I never took it that high or never really noticed. Makes about 400 Nm of torque, like I said. It's not a torque monster, but it is a fun car to drift. It got better driving experience compared to the S55. Officially, BMW has claimed it does 0 to 60 in 0 to 100 in about 4.5 and a quarter mile of 13.2. So yeah, my M3 Stage 2 did a 12.8 at the Elite Octane night drag. Yeah, as you can see, it sounds really good. People were at the beginning of the track and they were saying it sounded like they were right next to the car. That's how loud the M3 is. But the E92, E93, M3, and of course I got the Kresig level 7 F1 exhaust, so it's even louder with the VRSF test pipes in there. And of course you hear that crackle burble tune at the end. Like I mentioned, this thing, the F80, stops much better than the E92, E93. So every year, obviously, it's getting better and better. It's driving pleasure-wise, E92. There's some purists out there who prefer the E46 or M3 over the E92. So, you know, it all depends on your choice. Some people say the F80 is the best M3 that's ever come out. For me, it's the E92. BMW was late to the party with putting V8s in their entry-size sedans, where Mercedes came out with it in the C55. Audi had it in the S4 and the RS4, the B7. Then BMW finally in 2008 released the M3 with the S65 V8. The C63 was still a V8 twin turbo in the 205 after the 204 gen, which competed with the E92. This obviously competed with the 205 C63, which had a V8 twin turbo. So now it's downsized, unfortunately, to a 2-liter 4-cylinders. And this has still remained inline 6 twin turbo. So yeah, the F80 came with these cool, you know, one-piece, you could say, racing seats kind of seats, where the E92, E93 had 2-piece seats. The M logo is actually in this light up when you open the door and unlock the car, so that's a pretty good touch as well. Other than that, I feel like the legroom is slightly decreased compared to the E-Series, believe it or not, because I've had a E90 3 Series back home in America. When I shifted here, I got an F30, and I felt like the E90 was much more roomier than the F30. Obviously, with the creature comforts, the technologies, and the space gets less, so that's always a negative point. But, you know, this car is not meant to be chauffeur driven anyways. Hope you guys liked that video on the comparisons of the E92, E93 M3 compared to the F80. I think the E92, E93 is a great car. I feel like it's the best M3 made till date, because you're talking about a V8 naturally aspirated. The driving experience, on paper, the number wise, it's not that great, but the driving experience and the feeling, the feedback you get from the car is far, far better than the F80 or any other M3s. So it has a nice mix of what BMW had done and how far they had come as a company and their motorsports division as well. So comment below what's your favorite, and we'll try to do the G82 soon, M4. So yeah, see you guys soon. Like, subscribe, share, and join the cartel.